time to put down your rod and pick up your headphones. Join JC and Andy from Ebb Tide Tackle for The Outflow, the podcast talking all things lure fishing with hardcore fishers from all over the world.
Hey everyone, on this episode of The Outflow, JC and I sit down and chat all things kingfish with two absolute gurus that we have here in Australia. We've got Shane Mensforth from SA Angler in South Australia. Shane's a highly regarded fishing media stalwart of the industry. And also Justin Duggan from Sydney Fly Fishing. We discuss the current picture of yellowtail kingfish throughout southern and southeastern Australia. It's an in-depth discussion on everything, including the movements, captures, tagging, economics, and some future direction that we all think needs to be looked at for one of our favourite sports fish here in Australia. So have a listen, enjoy. We'd love a 5-star review on Apple iTunes and any of your other podcast hosts. We jumped straight in with Shane discussing recapture rates of kingfish in South Australia.
Tending to agree and tending to think the same way here. There's a lot of, there's something like 600 kings tagged here in the last 12 months. And the number of recaptures is really quite high. And a lot of those fish have only been out for 8-10 months, like they're being tagged, caught and released and tagged in the same season twice. So that, we've got a fair sort of interchange of fish here in the Gulfs and out in the oceans, but also we've got quite a few fish now turning up over your way and, as far north as Tweed Head. So they're nomadic fish for sure.
That, I think again, it was last, Justin, you'll probably know, there was a bigger South Australian tagged fish caught in New South Wales not too long back.
I do recall. I don't recall where it was recaptured. I think it's interesting. Just to wiggle back to what you were saying about the New South Wales ones caught in Gippsland, just to kind of set the picture around those fish that were tagged. The place those fish were tagged, what happened was basically a post went up from a Sydney guide, quite an inoffensive post that he was catching some really good-sized kingfish. It was posted in real time and it was posted with a background that was quite obvious in it. Mm-hmm. That weekend, there was 56 boats that I counted in that area where those fish were, an area that would have been, gosh, you'd be lucky to have it 250 metres wide. And there was 56 boats. I couldn't count the kayaks that were in there. And there was fish being caught for days after that in that one spot. And it was definitely what you'd have to say was a pre-spawn aggregation of fish.
Yeah,
now,
right.
The guides that were in there catching fish were putting a lot of tags in. There was also guys who weren't guides who were doing it, putting tags in those fish. But you are talking about was potentially hundreds of fish caught out of that one spot that was almost certainly an aggregation of fish. And then to find out that those tagged fish, quite a number have been, including I've recaptured those fish, and then people have recaptured those fish down in Victoria. I'm starting to think, you're probably onto something there with the amount of fish that are actually out there and how many are recaptured.
Yeah. Andy, from the science that Corey Green has done, Victoria really doesn't have a population base of kingfish, do we? They come through.
Yeah, they come through. Yeah, seasonal. And look, whether it's on just a general, I guess, transit run from Queensland, New South down around to South Australia, or if it's a spawning activity run, that's not defined. But the big size class gaps that we've got here, that's what the main thing they've looked at. And also the maturity of the fish. Like most of the fish that we get through here have been 2 to 3 years old. That's all.
Yeah, right. Which is like up to legal size almost, isn't it?
No, not even.
Not even?
No, and that's one of the things that we'll probably get into a little bit is the size of these fish. All the state minimum size limits, these fish are still 2 to 3 years off being legal size. Mature.
Yeah, spawning mature.
Yeah, spawning mature, they're talking minimum 80 centimetres. And these fish, we can take them at 60, 65. Doesn't really do well for your future.
Never had a chance to spawn.
Yeah. No, that's it.
That's a
And,
problem.
and in New South Wales, you can take 5 a day per person per day.
Yeah, same here in Vic.
Mm.
Yep, and
Yeah,
our
we're
size
two-
limit in
we're two
Victoria
coming
is
down to one.
60.
Yeah, we're 2 down to 1 here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the Shane? What's the angler feel with having a bag limit of 1? Is it negativity towards it, or
No, very much positivity. 90% of the guys I know who seriously chase kings, and that's a lot of people, they'd be pushing hard for catch and release only. Very few of them take a fish, and if they do, it's a meter fish, nothing bigger.
yeah?
And like 1 in 100 would get kept, from what I can see, particularly this year.
Yeah. Okay.
Gee, that's a very healthy attitude towards your fishery.
It is, and
Yeah.
that's why we get a bit upset when we see what's happened here lately with the pros. I don't want to bash pros, and that's not what we're here to do, but
Yeah,
we do get upset when you see a mob of fish coming into a pro boat and there's tags sticking out of quite a few of them.
Yeah.
They've been put back, and they're never going to provide any more data because they're not in the system anymore.
Yeah, that's it.
sure. And I agree. We don't want this to be a bashing exercise.
No.
And it's clear what's driven that, Shane, that your snapper stocks have collapsed, probably through some bad practice.
Yep.
And pros have got to earn a living, so they've moved on to the next available species. And it just happens to be, probably, I know snapper are bloody important, but, kingfish have got that really strong place in sport fishing anglers' hearts, haven't they?
Oh, they certainly do.
It hurts.
Oh, it hurts a lot, mate. And they've never really been a strong market fish here in Adelaide. They're getting, at the end of it, they're getting about $6 a kilo for these fish. They've never had a strong place in the fish market ever. They've just always been a bycatch. But this year, because the snapper are gone, maybe, and the guys are looking for some opportunity, to rectify that, they've found these fish and they're getting stuck into them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I should declare also, I sit on the council up here, RF New South Wales, that advises the minister, and that's the Recreational Fishing Council. And I can tell you straight away, when you talk about, the bashing of the commercial sector or whatever, I can tell you I'm not one of those people. I'm very pro-commercial sector, and properly managed professional commercial fishermen are really no different to us as recs. And I think we should be working together with that sector. So with that in mind, anything we do say about practices and commercial, I'm equally as likely to say something about bad practices in the recreational sector as well. And I think we've got to be even-handed on that. Yes. And when it comes to yellowtail kingfish, I mean, if you take the Sydney markets, for instance, Sydney fish markets, wild-caught kingfish don't represent a high amount of value to the commercial sector. The catch rate has been going through the floor really for over a decade. The catches have been getting less and less and less. I think actually the rec sector are the ones that need to have a look at what's happening. It's not to say the commercial sector isn't involved in the process of maybe kingfish stocks declining fairly rapidly, but they're only a part of the picture, and I don't actually think they're the bigger part of the picture. So there's more to it. I mean, the situation in South Australia that was highlighted, Shane, obviously that's different when you're targeting spawning fish. And that goes for rec anglers. If we know they're spawning fish, really we need to use common sense there and not be removing future stocks. And I think the same goes for commercial. But when you're actively using drones to target known spawning aggregations, that's a different practice. And to be honest, talking to a lot of pros, they were totally against that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. As I said, because of the nature of where they are here, they're probably there for spawning and spawning only. There's no science around these fish from the SA government. They've got no idea. So everyone assumes these fish are spawning, and a lot of the bigger fish we catch at this time of the year are in spawning conditions. The males are shooting milt all over the place, and the females obviously full of roe. But yeah, as I said, we're looking after them as recreationals, and we look after them really well. But that's why we look a bit narky when we see these fish hitting the market for no money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what are those fish worth to the economy? I mean, I've just spent a fair bit of time the last few weeks saying that, at the moment with COVID, the Australian government is looking for an economic recovery plan for the country. I can speak for New South Wales. Our recreational fishery is worth somewhere in the vicinity of $3.5 to $4 billion a year spent. Game boats, petrol, fuel, coffee shops, accommodation, tackle, all that sort of stuff. And I don't know what the commercial sector is worth right now in the current form, but it's in the few hundred million, but it's certainly not in the billions of dollars that we have. And yellowtail kingfish don't represent much to the commercial sector. So I wonder what that fish that makes $6 a kilo in the markets is worth recreationally. I don't think you need to be a scientist or an economist to work out it's worth significantly more alive than dead.
I've done 2 trips to South Australia to target, I guess, what would be Australia's biggest kings, I think fair to say. One was a trip with Big Ash out of Port Lincoln out to the cabbage patches.
Yep.
There's accommodation, there's flights. Okay, flights don't contribute much to South Australia, but there's accommodation, there's paying charter fees, there's meals in a pub. You're on a trip, so you don't mind spending. The other time we went to Coffin Bay, and we targeted the spawning fish that are coming into Coffin Bay. Like it's widely recognised that that's what they're doing. Forgive me if I'm wrong there, Shane. Those kind of October, November fish. What was that? You don't know?
Well, there's been no science around it.
Yeah.
Everyone assumes that these fish are there to spawn, but no one knows for sure. No one's seen it spawning.
That's a fair call, but I guess probably the assumption that I was operating on. So we went for 10 days. We flew in, we hired a car, we actually hired a boat in Port Lincoln, and we stayed in Coffin for 10 days. We caught a fish between 35 and 40 kilos and let it go.
Yep.
And went home, couldn't be happier. Not everyone's going to be happy with no fish coming home in the esky, but from our perspective, no interest in necking that fish, and it's a trip that the guys still talk about. Like, it was an amazing experience. It was far from easy. Yeah.
That's a $3,000 to $4,000 fish by the sound of it.
For sure.
Easily. Yep. Yeah.
And one fish, one angler. Oh yeah.
We've got one charter operator here who runs a 5-month season out of Coffin Bay, fishes Rocky and Greenlee Island, and he tagged 100 fish in the last season. He normally tags about 100. He's catch and release only, and up until the COVID thing, 80% of his clientele were Victorian. So that's a lot of people coming into South Australia, spending a lot of money with him, a lot of money in Coffin Bay, and a lot of money generally to catch South Australian kingfish.
Andy, you were just talking to Jason Legg from Cairns about Victoria's contribution to the national fishing dollars, weren't you?
Yeah. And, well, especially up there that, the black marlin season, but also their topwater, their GTs and all that kind of thing. And he said over 80% of their customer base in Cairns is Victorian anglers. So, and he said, basically Melbourne being locked down has pretty much collapsed the entire black marlin charter season that they've had. So he got a fish a week and a half ago that he said probably between 900 and 980 pound. He said he didn't want to call it 1,000 pound because you never want to call one without, you can't just call it. He said this year, if an angler wants to take one of those massive fish, there's no boat, there's no motherships out there to weigh these fish. He said there's about 10 to 15 boats working, where normally there'd be 20 or 30 or more. And he said, most guys have got a trip here and a trip there. He said it's just different, non-existent. So
even New South Wales anglers can't get up there, really.
Yeah,
been able to because of that government as well. And I've had charter guys who are going to Queensland who've lost their charters because they can't get up there, so they're having to spend their money back here. So I'm benefiting from the closure, except for the weather here. But But thank goodness. But I mean, back onto the kingfish side of things. I mean, there's plenty of people who pay just to catch kingfish. I mean, I'm based in Sydney, and as a guide here, I can't tell you the number of people that come here just to catch kingfish on fly and light tackle them. We don't have a fishery for huge kingfish here. They do exist here. We see them, and we've had probably consistently the fish have been getting bigger over the years. I'm seeing more larger fish, just not large numbers of fish, but the size has gone up a bit. But I really feel like we could have a New Zealand style fishery here in Australia, and I just think that's my opinion. It's not scientific, I suppose, but there's no reason it can't be. It has been in the past very similar. I know the banks off southern Sydney there was 30 and 40 kilo kingfish stacked up there in the 60s, and I've got photos from Pittwater here in Sydney back in the 50s of a fisherman's hall at Palm Beach here in northern Sydney. There's not a fish under 20 kilos in that hall laying up on the beach, and there's got to be 40 or 50 fish there. There's nothing under 15, 20 kilos, probably 20 kilos. Some of them are 30 plus. There's people in the photo, so you can see the scale of the fish.
Yeah.
And there's no reason we can't have at least something to rival New Zealand. And people are taking their money to New Zealand to catch kingfish. What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly right.
Go on, Andy.
No, I was just going to say on that, there's proven research that the New Zealand stock of kingfish and the East Australian stock of kingfish we have here is one and the same. 100%. And they do move between. So, with some good management practices, there is legitimately no reason why that can't happen. And it's the same thing, like down here in the late 70s and early 80s, you'd see fish from down the rip at Port Phillip Heads that were, 20 plus kilos. And guys catching, 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time in a trip. And they vanished. There wasn't a kingfish caught there for 10 or 15 years.
But it has come back in Victoria. I was reading Dr. Green, the study, and he said that they were in recovery. And I know there's anglers up here who are using that study to say that, oh, no, the kings aren't in decline there. Look, here's the Victorian study. I would say from what I'm hearing in South Australia and New South Wales that goes against the flow of what anecdotally and scientifically I'm hearing. But it is one study, and it's not to be discounted, but it's interesting. Anecdotally, what are you guys seeing in Victoria?
I've read that study fairly well, and I know a bit about the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's kind of drew a bit of a long bow to say they're in recovery when there's no baseline from it. So it wasn't really compared directly to anything. It was all just, hearsay and angler interviews saying, it's better now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, there was a lot in that where it was like, it used to be really good. Then we've had such a terrible period and now it's better. So, it's opinion.
Yeah.
Not saying it's wrong.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a scientific basis that it has been made, but those fish, like, they did a lot of genetic sampling from them, and they're all the same. They're fish that migrate through to New South Wales, and they're fish that have pushed, across to South Australia as well. So the average size of the fish tended to be about 3 years old in the west part of the state. Central and eastern part of the state, the fish tended to be on average about 2 years old. And that kind of fell into the same class of fish that you'd hear people catching around the traps, especially as you push further east. So
it's interesting. I mean, you would expect some recovery after New South Wales banned their kingfish traps. Those things were devastating.
Yeah.
And I know the very year after they banned the traps, I saw my first schools of rat kingfish in Sydney Harbour on the surface near the Harbour Bridge and Opera House 1 year later. We used to see small patches of them, but I'm talking a school of 1,000, maybe 2,000 fish all slurping microbait on the surface. I'd never seen that before. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was incredible. I was like, wow, what a recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
We see very few small kingfish here in South Australia.
Yeah.
The only ones we see out there are escapees from fish farms.
Right.
Anything under 10 kilos is pretty unusual here. You don't see these 50, 60 centimetre fish apart from escapees. So I'm guessing if they're spawned here, they go to you guys to grow and then they come back. We just don't see these 18, 20 inch long fish at all.
Well, that's probably a bit, Shane, a little bit like what we see with King George whiting.
Yeah.
Is is it Kangaroo Island is essentially the spawning ground, and the larval push is southeast.
Yep.
Southeast, Andy.
Yep.
Yeah, towards our
southwest to us.
Southwest. And we get the juveniles. They get here to a certain size, and the science is that they head back your way.
Yeah, we get a lot of small King George whiting here for sure. I caught half a dozen yesterday while I was fishing for sand whiting off the beach. 6-inch longfish. There's millions.
Yeah,
of them.
right.
Yeah, okay.
I'm jealous, boys. I'm jealous. None of those up here. Not very often. But, you look at the recruitment of Australian salmon and you look at Tasmania and they have all the salmon trout, as they call the small salmon down there. And then I guess what's happening is you get the spawning run of the salmon up the east coast, up towards Sydney and then all the way north as far as Surfers Paradise. And then you get that egg deposit going back down, and it basically the only thing it's got to stop at is Tasmania, and you get that hatch of eggs there, and then bang, you get this spawning run where the small fish suddenly appear there, and they'll grow up in Tasmania and then head across the ditch there to Melbourne and Victoria and a bit of South Australia, and then they seem to go up the east coast. And I'm sure there's a similar sort of thing probably going on with kings by the sound of it. If you're not getting any of those really small fish down south there in South Australia.
The only ones we get are fish farm escapees, and they've sort of stopped that out a bit in the last 2 years. We don't see too much of that anymore. So
right.
a kingy under say 10 kilos is pretty unusual here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know they're wanting to do some tagging studies. I've been pretty heavily involved in talking to different people about studies going on. I was just talking to someone in South Australia actually, and they want to find out where our recruitment's coming from up here around the Sydney region, because looking at the studies and the biomass they've got at the moment, their kingfish stocks, they are concerned, are at such a low level now so quickly. They're not sure where the recruitment's coming from. They want to actually do sat tagging and see if they can find out where the hell they're spawning, because the thought is there's an offshore peak or area that there must be big fish that are recruiting, because there doesn't seem to be enough big fish up here anymore.
It's an interesting point on that recruitment, and there's a huge knowledge gap, in the kingfish stuff, especially like the FRDC rates it as undefined, the stock status.
100%.
So, our Federal Fisheries Research Corporation can't even tell us where the stock sits. They assume it's around 20% of its original biomass, but they don't know because none of this research has been done. So, it's kind of kingfish has slipped into I guess it's been ignored really since they got rid of kingy traps. It's kind of become a species of minimal interest commercially. As you said, it's pretty much a bycatch fishery really, and especially as catches have declined. So to get things back on track and get the species as a whole going forward again, you need some baseline research there. So
100%. And Shane, I'm sure you can speak for South Australia, but in terms of New South Wales, I mean, we've been very much part of trying to put a rocket up the fisheries management structure to say you can't have fisheries management without the science. And I understand there's not a bottomless pit of money there.
Yeah.
But you can't be making decisions around stocks without science and proper stock assessment. You'll never get baseline studies in terms of biomass, because we can't go back 250, 260 years, but
exactly.
We can have a starting point. And actually on the kingfish, I'm seeing the FRDC biomass assessment is actually 2 to 14% of biomass.
Yeah.
Now, if that's even close to true, give that a 100% factor of error or whatever, it doesn't matter. That's like scary reduction in biomass.
Yeah, well, that's tipping point,
Yeah.
That's on the verge of collapsing.
Yeah. Look, the amount of research that's been done into kingfish in South Australia, you could fit on your fingernail, and it scares me that the government are making decisions on the future of this fish based on no data, no knowledge. And it just staggers me. They've never been an important commercial species, so they've never commanded much respect, if you like, from the government. But now, because of all this stuff that's come out in the last 2 weeks, they're starting to jump up and down and say, well, we need to do something, but we have no science, we have no data. What are we going to do?
So
Yeah.
on that, guys, what science would you like to see? Money's tight. Nationally, state level budgets are probably harder than they're ever going to be. If you had a defined amount of money to spend on kingfish research so we understood this stock biomass better, where would you spend your money?
Yeah, good question. The government needs to get involved, a lot more involved in the tagging program that we've got going here through New South Wales Fisheries. They need to have some hard data, and the only way they're going to get some hard data is to join us and get some knowledge in the bank. They just don't know anything, and it really annoys me.
Yeah, I think looking at it realistically, you've got to pick some key species. As part of an economic recovery plan, you've got to work out what are the species that are going to drive the most money. Certainly in New South Wales, I think kingfish are a huge one. And I think that's part of their demise, is they're so popular. I think that would be a species. What's the whiting worth to South Australia, to Victoria? What's the snapper worth? You've got to pick key species, and then you have to inject money into proper, thorough scientific stock assessment, including understanding of spawning. So you're going to have to do some sat tagging. You're going to have some sort of movement-based tagging where you can understand spawning grounds, spawning areas. It may involve spawning closures down the track. You can't manage a fishery if you're hammering the spawning stocks.
No.
And on that, we already have very, very good science on kingfish. We know they're a highly fecund species. We know they've got fast growth potential through most of their range. We also know that as a species, they will recover really quickly. The science we know when they breed. So you don't have to spend any money or very little money to change bag and size limits and educate anglers. At the moment in New South Wales, I can kill 5 65 centimetre fish, or I can go out and spear or kill 530 centimetre fish. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I can do that every day if I want to. If I can find the fish, I can do that. We need slot limits, and we know when they breed. We know where the bigger fish carry the eggs. We can manage that with very little expenditure at all. Bring the bag limits down, bring the size limit up. I mean, 280 centimetre fish is going to feed you almost as much as 565s. You know what I mean? It's not a huge reduction in food.
Yeah, exactly right. And, if you, for instance, say talking that 80 centimetre mark, that's sort of the bottom line where the fish do become mature. So, and in a great, I guess, holistic principle, if you set your minimum target or your minimum size limit at a level where a fish gets to the chance to spawn at least once, then it has potential future benefit to grow the species, as in the entire biomass and numbers through good recruitment. The further you push that, obviously, the bigger you can get that growth potential, but it comes at a cost, I guess, as well. But, slot limits and a bit of good angler education, it's already been done on other species, Murray cod in Victoria, for example. So people go, oh, it's too hard, you can't do this. And anglers will jump up and down and say, oh, you're stopping me from catching kingfish for another 2 years or 3 years. But you go, well, hang on. In 3 years' time, those fish will have spawned. They're probably going to be 90 centimetres or over by then anyway, instead of taking these 60 centimetre or 65 centimetre rats. And all of a sudden, suck it up, because in 5 years' time, you're going to be sick of 90 centimetre and metre long kingfish. And then
good problem to have.
Yeah. And in 10 years' time, we've got a New Zealand.
Well, the other thing is, if I can just pull up a little bit on that, one thing you said there, the growth rate from 65 to 80 is probably closer to 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Not 2 to 3 years. So for instance, I mean, we've got a fish in the Port Hacking that was caught just last year, tagged. it was 65 at capture, and less than, I think it was 8 months or 10 months later, it's 80 something centimetres. They don't all grow that fast.
No, that's
but
it.
I know up here in New South Wales, for the most part, the most you'd probably be waiting is probably 12 months for that growth. So you're literally asking anglers to just forgo a season of 65 centimetre fish, and they're going to reap the rewards.
Yeah.
Or at least some reward from it. And I know when we changed from 60 to 65, there wasn't too much complaining, a little bit. But when we did that, every fish that we caught wasn't 59 centimetres anymore. They were all 64 and a half, you know.
Yeah, exactly right.
It'd be great to get them up, though, you know.
I distinctly remember that, Justin, fishing, Montague and Green Cape and Eden, where it was like, why are these fish all just under? But literally the next trip, they weren't. They do grow so damn fast. And I think if you can get it into anglers' heads, some sensible thought about what are the size fish you'd like to catch, let's make that, somewhere there a baseline for the minimum. It's probably another difficult conversation to have around bag limits as well, though. That some guys get so attached to, I'm legally allowed. It's really hard to get them to shift their thinking around to what is actually, maybe forget legal, what's good custody of the stock? What's a good baseline to put on a bag limit from the point of view of this fishery staying at least as good as it is, or heaven forbid, getting better. It's a challenging discussion to have with a lot of guys.
Yeah, it isn't. It is, and you're always going to get those who don't agree. But I mean, it's what we're talking before. I mean, if the growth rate's 65 to 80 centimetres is 6 to 12 months, and you know that you can go out and get almost the same feed from 2 fish that you'd have to catch 5 to get the equivalent, it's kind of a win-win, isn't it? And even from a commercial point of view, more kilos for less effort. I don't know, mate. Well, we're all educated anglers. Like I've been following Shane since I started angling. Been reading his articles for years, and obviously educated anglers. But these aren't the people that are going to bring forth that argument. It's the less educated person. You just got to convince them that it's. I guess there's more food on the table for them and more opportunity for them. If they think they're losing something, I don't think they're going to be for it. But the educated angler knows they're actually gaining.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. I think that's probably, I'd be all for it. If you said to me tomorrow, we're bumping it up to 80 and we're dropping the bag limit to 2, I'd do a dance, man. I'd be wrapped.
I think we all would.
Yeah. I think, Shane's sitting over there thinking, we don't get 80s. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, but you'll reap the reward when there's more eggs in the system and more species. That's
true. That's true.
And the other thing is, even if you don't directly reap the reward on kingfish, there's another management thing in place where we start to move more to these harvest strategies that are based around basically lines for a tipping point on the species that are manageable. At the moment, we manage species where basically we wait till they drop. I mean, I think of the gemfish stocks off New South Wales. I mean, they waited till they were absolutely, I won't use the word, but you know what I mean. They were totaled. We better close the fishery. But, hopefully we can move to much more sensible management where we have points where we go, well, we're keeping the biomass at 60% or 50%. Or even 40%, whatever. And when these triggers come in, we're going to change how it's done. We're going to have commercial tax, which is total allowable catch, or we're going to change methodology, or we're going to restrict bag limits now down and move them down 20%. Or there's so many tools that can be used, but at the moment we're playing ridiculous catch up where we wait for the fishery to collapse, and then here we are all sitting here going, oh, we've got to do something about it. Well, in fact, some people are sitting here saying, oh, it's all perfectly good. There's no problem. There's kingfish everywhere. But, those in the know there's a problem.
You just described our snapper fishery in a nutshell. Exactly what happened. We were under the government 5-6 years ago. We could see what was happening. We could see the commercial longline catch going up and up and up. We could see that the school sizes diminishing, and then before it was, before the government got off their bums and did something about it, it was all over. We could see it happening, and we put our case forward, but no one was listening until it was too late. Now we know where we are.
Well, I guess New South Wales inherited one advantage. We got your director, and it means that he probably won't sit around and watch it happen to another species because he knows what happened.
I think so. I think you're exactly right. Exactly right.
There is an elephant in the room we haven't discussed. I don't know what it's like for you, Shane, in South Australia, the black market, because we talked about commercial sector, but I'm a big advocate for legal, professional, commercial sector. I think there's some great people in that sector, and they're no different to you and I, and a lot of them are passionate wrecks. But the black market trade in kingfish, I think, is a lot bigger than a lot of us know. And I mean, I'll give you one example. What the hell is a recreational angler doing with a lead line? What?
Yeah.
What's recreational about lead lining?
Yeah.
I think that's a big elephant in the room. I'd like to see that addressed very quickly. There's some things that management can do to, like lead lining alone, just commercial only. I mean, if you're lead lining, you're just meat gathering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually do know a couple of guys that lead line fish the Rip in Port Phillip Bay. They're largely ex-commercial guys themselves, and they're doing it to get meat.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there's nothing wrong with catching a feed of fish. But lead lining, really?
Yeah. The black market in Victoria, in terms of, I really can't comment about kingfish, but we know we have a very strong black market for both snapper and bluefin tuna. It's been well proven.
Yep. Yeah, they've made them a key targeted species for, I guess, the penalties for those fish are a lot higher than other species because it's so well known.
But how backward are our fisheries management tools? I mean, I've got an iPhone here. I've got a computer in front of me. Why is not every fisherman commercially fishing, every co-op that receives fish, and every restaurant or anyone who sells fish having to log the catch they bring in off the water, the catch they receive off the fisherman, and then the catch they buy off the co-op? If you can only buy and receive fish through a computer logging, which is just real-time logging of what you've caught and what you've received. These are wild animals we're talking about. We're not talking about cattle in a yard. And if it's cattle in a yard, you're still logged through the yard sales. It's still all logged with tags and everything.
Yeah,
we're so backward because the minute you've got bluefin tuna on your restaurant menu and you can't account for where that came from, or you've got it in your co-op and you can't account for that, mate, you get one warning and we shut your restaurant down, or that's it, $25,000 fine. That's a threatened species on your menu at on your sale list at the co-op, and you don't have any accountability for where that came from. It's not a big deal to get online. You're talking about a couple of apps and a management system through a computer, and everyone's registered.
It doesn't sound hard.
Well, it's effort on behalf of the commercials because they have to log it. But you know what? If the black market trade disappears, who can they buy their fish off? Yeah. Only from those guys, so they win.
Yeah, exactly right. It becomes a winning situation.
It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. It just cleans the whole industry up, and it means the commercial guys, which I said I'm passionate about, the good guys and good girls, earning their living out of commercial fishing. Now it's all managed. We know what they're catching, what's legal, what's not. It kind of eliminates fish sales beyond just selling to your mate, which is probably a small thing, but selling to restaurants and stuff, the restaurant should have to account for it as well.
Yeah, that level of black market of selling to family and friends, you're never going to stop that. I'm sure it has some impact, but that more grand scale where you're supplying the fish shop or the restaurant, there has to be measures.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be accountability to the public too. I don't think we're educating the public. It's another can of worms, but Mulloway stocks up here are in considerable trouble as well. And there's definitely a black market trade in Mulloway. And at the moment in New South Wales, Mulloway are in a recovery program. Now, what's a recovery program if you've got commercial netters taking 2 and 3 tons of them and putting them through the Sydney markets? That's not recovering the stock.
No, not at all.
And the public are not aware of this, so they'll buy Mulloway on the shelf, or they'll buy it in the restaurant. If you educate the public that fish is actually in a bit of trouble, then the market dries up pretty quickly as well. It just seems a bit backward to me at the moment.
the only black market that our fisheries seem to be interested in is abalone. Well, the black market in abalone here is huge.
Yeah.
And that's where all their compliance goes. That's where all their efforts go. They don't really care too much about anything else. So.
Yeah, we've got a lot of that in Victoria too. It's a priority species. Same with crayfish. I don't know how they allocate them. Andy, do you have any clue about what they decide is a priority or not? But yeah.
No, I think it can move and shift with current trends and demand. So, obviously when the bluefin are running hard, there's a lot of effort pushed into that and a lot of focus. But I think all in all, a huge percentage of our fisheries compliance work goes towards looking after those certain species. And there's 4. It's tuna, snapper, abalone, and rock lobster in Victoria. They're the 4 key ones that they really try and look after. But, back onto, I guess, kings and recovering jewfish or mulloway populations and all this kind of thing, we've got that inherent problem that Justin touched on before of don't try and wait till the pieces have fallen apart before you pick them up. Have a good bit of social license and a good bit of foresight to get it together now. It just needs to be done.
Why are we managing fisheries to be okay when we should be managing fisheries to be the best they possibly can be? Why wouldn't you want the best kingfish fishery you can have? Why would you just be happy with, oh yeah, it was okay, we didn't catch any this week, but we got some last week? I want to know every time I go out there, there's thousands of them,
Well, exactly right. And does that mean, looking at some of our state, well, here in Victoria, there's been a huge push for engagement and encouragement and getting people out and fishing. If the fish are there and the stock's good and everything's going great, you don't have to advertise and drive people come and try fishing because the fish will do it. People will see it. How good's that? Look out there. How good's that fishing? Let's go and do that. All these guys are catching fish everywhere. I want to go and do that. You don't have to, spend millions of dollars on advertising and throwing fish in lakes and that kind of thing. If you've managed everything properly to start with, then it's just going to flow.
I think they'll spend a lot more. Oh, sorry, Shane.
I love the attitude of the Victorian government towards recreational fishing in general. Is there another place in the world that's got a dedicated minister to recreational fishing? I don't know. Here, we don't command much respect, not much respect at all, and it's starting to wear thin. I can tell you.
Yeah, I guess there's been a lot of work over the years, and one big thing in Victoria was, and it goes back, it's probably 30 years now that we've had a fishing license, and this opens another can of worms, but it gives recreational fishermen a voice with money behind it. New South Wales the same. The more money you've got in that pool, the more relevant programs you can run, and you're actually commanding some authority because you're united. That's your voice, and the money can be driven into areas that's needed.
You got a seat at the table.
Yeah.
I've been banging my head against the wall about a fishing license here for 20 years. The government will not have a bar of it.
Yeah.
And I can't seem to get much support from the recreational masses. I just see it as another tax. Taxes here in South Australia have notoriously been badly managed. And I just can't get any support.
Neither side of the fence, Shane.
Sorry?
You can't get it from either side of the fence.
No, nothing from government level. And to be honest, not a lot from the recreational sector. They as I said, they see it as another tax. Oh, they pay boat ramp levies, whatever, are mismanaged, aren't used well, so they're suspicious, and I just don't want to borrow a fishing license. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a shame, mate. I think it's there'd be a lot of Victorians that see the value in every dollar of their fishing license, and would be like, if you doubled their fishing license, a good number would go, if it's being spent for our fishery, not a problem. There'd be plenty that wouldn't as well, that. But for the most part, I think Victorians see value in their fishing license dollars for sure.
Yeah, I just can't get the support here at all. We've had rallies, we've had petitions. I've spent half my life campaigning for a fishing license. Just got absolutely nothing.
That's challenging. On your own, I know even in Hawaii, they're trying to get a fishing license up for the same thing. So they've got a voice and a seat at the table, but it's the same attitude. Exactly the same attitude.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not without its problems, but it's certainly, I would say with New South Wales, I'm very much in favour of it, having seen it run now for a while. I mean, there's always going to be those that say the licence money isn't spent the way they wanted or whatever, but I can tell you every cent is accounted for. Every cent is absolutely there and available for the public to see. And there's nothing that's been spent on that doesn't better recreational anglers. It may not get everything recreational anglers want done.
Yeah.
And it's not like the fishery doesn't have its problems, but I tell you what, it's a pretty good thing to feel a sense of ownership in the fishery and a sense that you're putting back in. Even if you don't want to put back into the fishery, you're doing it with a fishing license. Yep. Your money's going to restocking programs. And I mean, as the population increases, we can't just keep taking, and that attitude, oh, it's my rights, is like the Charlton Heston out of my cold dead hands kind of attitude. Yeah. It might be your right to go fishing, but unfortunately there's 25 million of us now that have the same right. It's my right to also know that if I have kids grow up who like fishing, that there's going to be fish for them as well. That's their
Justin,
right.
you nailed it, mate. Like, more people are fishing than ever. We're getting better at it. Technologies, tells us where the fish are. We can't just keep taking fish at the rate that we want, or the total law allows, and expect the fishery to remain the same. Certainly not improve.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes for all the species. I mean, we're talking about whiting and all that sort of stuff. It's interesting you mentioned technology. Coming back to kingfish, people were saying, been saying to me, why do you think there's a problem with kingfish? Better technology, better reels, your Saltigas, your Stellas, FG knots, better knots. Fish that won their freedom 20 years ago don't win their freedom today. You got better boats, better sounders, better knowledge. The internet has absolutely fast-tracked everything. My other job, I work as a musician. I wish I had the facility back 20, 30 years ago when I was studying my craft, because I watch young musicians today and see what they learn just from YouTube. And it's the same with fisher people, like anglers learn so much from a YouTube tutorial, or they can go online. They can be out on their boat on a Facebook live feed or on a Facebook, and they can go, oh, Joe Bloggs is catching kings over here, and over they go, and a fish aggregation site gets hammered in real time. And that happens in Sydney all the time. I mentioned that one at the beginning where there was 56 boats in one spot. They didn't all discover that by accident. That was an internet post that led to probably a couple hundred, maybe several hundred fish being taken. Now, I'm not saying everyone took 5 fish. We know some people did, but they were all meter 10 fish. So, and they were rubbed up. Their bellies were rubbed and red. Their tails were red. They were all doing pre-spawning behavior for sure. That was the internet. So why are the kingfish stocks reducing? Because more of us are chasing them. We're all better at doing it. We know how to do it, and the gear's much better. So
yeah, fully agree, mate. They it's not as though they don't have a chance, but they've got less of a chance.
Yeah, mate. Especially with side imaging and all that. But the amount of times we plug a fish just from the sounder, or that I couldn't have done 20 years ago. We let most ours go, but it's so much easier these days.
Yeah, side imaging in shallow water that we fish is just we can't fish without side imaging now. 80% of the fish we catch in 5 or 6 meters of water, we find them 50 meters out the side of the boat.
Right.
Chuck a stick bait in the direction and crank it up, and the fish will come up and grab it.
Yeah. When are we going fishing, Shay?
Yeah.
Well, we're right in the middle of it now. Like Coffin Bay's fishing well, Port Augusta's fishing well. The offshore season's just about to start, so he's right in the middle of it now. It's all going pretty well. Everyone's catching plenty of fish.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you guys have a sensible bag limit and anglers who realise the value of the fish swimming around rather than on the table. And those big ones don't taste that good anyhow.
No, that's right. And we got a lot more people fishing for kings now than we had 18 months ago. A lot more people who'd never thought about it since the snapper disappeared. They think, well, what else can we have a crack at? And they're the guys that are out there now. They're learning and they're catching, but they're also feeling the pressure of the guys who know what they're doing to put the fish back. And it's. I was at Port Augusta 3 weeks ago. I reckon I saw 15 fish caught, and I reckon 14 of them went back. And that's about the ratio that I'd expect on a day out there.
Yeah, so that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
To see that anywhere here, for instance, Victoria, these rat kings that we get during the season, for instance, here around Melbourne, down the rip, around the heads, if there was 15 fish caught, to be honest, 14 would get necked and
If
straight
it's
in a
illegal,
bin.
they're dead. Yeah.
It's legal to do it, but out of that other day I was just talking about, the guy who killed the one fish we saw killed, everyone was looking at him sideways for the rest of the morning.
Yeah,
Right.
He knew.
Yeah,
he was entitled to take that fish, but he was being looked at by everyone. So
yeah, that's it. And look, certainly never begrudge anyone from taking, a feed of fish, but it's the usual things. Limit your catch, don't catch your limit, as they say. Take what you need. That's, I guess, for that feed or whatever. But yeah, it's just that mindset of anglers and the social license, I guess, that South Australia's developed. That's brilliant to see.
Yeah, that social pressure is fantastic. And I think another thing that's slowly creeping into some corners of kingfish and tuna is, all right, you've taken a fish, look after the thing and use all of it. You're seeing people use heads. You're seeing people, they used to cut off the filleting bins at Portland would be always full of tuna wings. People just didn't know what to do with them. But there's a lot more focus from probably a minority to, all right, I don't need to kill 2 bluefin. I can take one and use the whole thing properly instead of, a third of it ending up in a kill bin. The Kiwis are good at that. The Kiwis are really good at that. And I don't know whether it comes from the Maori influence or it's from the Jap angler influence, because they don't waste a thing. But having been over there, you go over and have an amazing trip in a fantastic fishery. You might catch 30 kingfish and one dies. That's it. One for the consumption of everybody, and everything else goes back. A couple of other tasty things might die as well. But they have a phenomenal fishery, but damn, they look after it as well.
Yeah, it's a very good point. If you haven't checked out Josh Nyland's here in Sydney, I don't know if you've seen him. I think he was on MasterChef doing a fish breakdown. Yeah, yep. Josh is fantastic, and I work with one of his offsiders who studied under him, and watching those guys deconstruct a fish is just a work of art. Oh, and you're right. I see bluefin here at the boat ramp, and I saw one day that only really utilised half the fish, but there was 2 frames there, and I thought they probably came from the same boat. They could have just taken the one and done it properly, and let the other one go.
Yeah, look, when they're running here and we're able to go pretty often, Andy and I will often have a discussion if we're fishing together. Do you have a need for any tuna? Oh, I could use half of one. Oh yeah, I could too. And we'll kill one between us. It's just a different attitude. It's an attitude towards what are my immediate needs. I could kill heaps, but I don't need them. So don't. It'd be nice to see a bit of that creep into kingfish, because there's that entitlement aspect of bag limits that creeps in with a lot of people. I can, so I will.
Yeah. And I think also as seasoned anglers who all of us are, I'm sure, caught our fair share of fish of all sizes. Yeah, I also have a fair bit of heart for someone who, catches their first big kingfish or their first big snapper or whatever. And there is a thing there for a lot of people who've never caught a big fish or a good sized fish or even a keeper sized fish. Like I get people catch their first kingfish ever and it's legal and they want to keep it. And I get that, and I don't have a problem with that generally. So it's easy as someone who's caught a heap of fish to sort of scowl at someone who's keeping one. And I go back to that situation you talked about, Shane, and I totally agree. I probably would have been one of the people looking sideways at the guy who killed it, but we also don't know the story. That might be his first one ever. He might let the next 30 go. He might have said, oh, I'm going to keep my first one. And we've all done it. I've eaten big kings before. I only did it once.
Not that good.
They're not even that good as a smaller fish. They're good. They're good, but there's much better fish in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I love them. I actually, I'm not saying I like eating big ones, but I love eating Yellowtail Kings. But I don't love it out of the freezer.
No good.
I love it fresh.
Bluefin's no good frozen either.
No, I don't rate it. Not out of the freezer. It's average once it starts coming out. It's there's things you can do to make it a bit better, but it'd be better to have a fresh one. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree that the kings are good eating, but if I pull a dusky flathead over the side and a kingfish, I'll definitely be letting the king go every time. And there's better fish than flathead too, but still, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Shane, how's the engagement going with the commercial sector over the current issue that you guys have got?
They've gone very, very quiet.
I
copped a caning on social media.
No doubt.
Yeah, and they've all discontinued their Facebook accounts. They've closed them all down and headed for the hills. I've not heard a peep out of any of the pros now for about 3 weeks. They know they've been looked at, and they know they're copying plenty of flack from all directions. So they're pretty much shut up shop. But I think the government's going to have a look at this. It's pretty unusual for the government to get excited about any fish that's not a big commercial fish. But they're going to, due to public pressure, they're going to have a look at it. So maybe by this time next year, we might have some different rules in place.
Yeah, okay. That actual ability to net kingfish, I don't think any other state has that.
It's pretty unique.
Do you know, Justin, Andy?
Yeah, it's South Australia's the only state where it is legal. So it's all a line fishery, I think, everywhere else now.
Yep.
Yeah, we're allowed bycatch in New South Wales on a net, but to be honest, it's definitely been misused. I've got photos from up Southwest Rocks region where there's a net full of kings and nothing else. It's hard to be bycatch when there's nothing else in the net.
Yeah,
kings.
Exactly.
I know it's our 20% bycatch of what?
Yeah,
but mostly not done here. Yeah.
What makes them so vulnerable to the netting here is that most of the fishing is done in 3 meters of water.
Right.
Yeah.
They can get the whole school. Not one fish will escape, and they're so easy to handle because they can't go deep. They can't bust the net. They're just corralled, and they net them in creeks and in mangroves and in creek mouths. It's the only other place I've seen fish in this shallow water around mangroves is on the North Island, New Zealand. Nowhere else in the world, I think, you can find kings in that sort of environment as we have here. That must make them so vulnerable to overfishing.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you can take the school.
Yeah, they don't miss one. They get them all.
Yeah.
How many eggs? If they were all carrying eggs? How many future stock?
You're talking billions of fish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely billions. It's just criminal for those spawning fish to be taken like that and handled roughly the way they have been. That they don't go on ice, they go on the deck and smash themselves to pieces. They get into the market, the skins are all wrinkly. It's just a very, very poor product, handled badly.
And I've seen, it's anecdotal, but you'd probably have a better idea that the dumping of these large fish on the market is ruining the price of the farmed fish.
Exactly. We've got a lot of pissed off fish farmers here.
Yeah,
kingfish farmers, and we've got a lot of angry processors and fish smokers. We've got a couple of guys who smoke kingfish for a living here, and they're really, really, really angry. So it's decimated their livelihood. The people seeing what's happened to these kingfish, how badly they've been handled, the wild fish, and that translates back to the farm fish, and they're just not buying them. So there's a lot of trouble here with our processor and wild fish.
It's kind of nonsensical in a way. Like I looked at the Sydney fish market. This is just Sydney fish market. And looked at farmed, and 660,000 tons of farmed seafood goes through the Sydney fish markets, and their number one biggest selling fish is farmed kingfish. The commercial catch of wild kingfish doesn't even rate. Like, I couldn't even find it. It was so far down the list. I'm sure it's there somewhere. But in terms of its value to the markets up here, and I'm sure it's not much different anywhere else, why on earth would you be dumping that much poor fish into the markets for that? I mean, it's so short-sighted. What was in it for them? How many dollars? Like, could we hold a cup out for them or a hat? And, I'll go and busk for them if they want. Rather than see them killed. They'll probably make more money than they made from those fish.
It really sounds like a sad set of circumstances for me with the collapse of the snapper fishery, that it's driven them onto, what else can we do? It doesn't point well to a great future.
Is there any compensation for them, Shane?
As in what? If you take the kingfish away from them?
No. The government's removed the snapper. That was a government decision, and it was their mismanagement.
Yep.
What compensation does a commercial? I mean, recreationally, we lose the fun.
Yep.
Commercially, they've lost livelihoods.
They have, and a lot of them have got out of the fishery. They've sold their licenses. There's a buyback scheme on at the moment, and a lot of them are jumping out because of that. But they got small compensation, but not enough to keep them in business. That's for sure. That's why they're looking at other areas now.
So it's interesting. That brings me on to just a thought there too. You know, when you do have a fishing license and input from lots of people on a license fee, there is the option, like we had here in New South Wales, to actually buy commercial licenses out and create recreational fishing havens. Been pretty damn successful. Some of the best fisheries in the country for some of these species in New South Wales certainly are in these recreational fishing havens, and they use that money to buy professional licenses out and compensate commercial anglers. So,
a lot of that's gone on in Victoria as well, in some of our eastern estuaries, Andy, to buy out commercial netters, and a lot of those places are fishing a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, they are, but that's I guess another can of worms there as well. Look here, potentially there's a lot of grey areas, but you've got to look at a lot of environmental factors and changes that influenced and affected the fisheries. That I guess the blame was pointed strictly at commercials when, to be honest, it wasn't, the commercials' fault. The entire, I guess, ecosystems have changed.
Yeah.
So can of worms there.
Yeah, they weren't the only factors, and there's certainly a lot of people that have very strong arguments the other way about those buyouts. Yeah,
for sure. And look, commercial fishing in general, as Justin touched on, they're custodians of their own, workplace. That they don't really have why would you go out and just take every single fish that's there for a payday today when you're not going to have one tomorrow, next month, next year, or in 10 years? It's a good businessman will never do that. So,
and that's the majority of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Majority. Yep. And that's why we say at the beginning, and I know Shane was on the same page, it's the ones performing bad practices and short-sightedness, like taking spawning kings for $6 a kilo, not treating them well. That's I feel no guilt or shame about calling that sort of practice out. But in saying that, it is very easy for people to commercial bash, like to bash the commercials. Oh, there's no fish this year. Oh, why? Oh, the commercials took them all. Yeah. When it's nothing to do with that at all. So you're on a good point there. Like, you've got to be careful. But bad practice is bad practice, no matter whether it's rec or pro.
Yep, spot on.
I'll ask you both. You both got really different fisheries and probably different issues. Justin, if you could change one or two things about your New South Wales fishery for the future, what would you do for kingfish?
Ban the internet.
No more Facebook. Done. That'd help. That would help.
Educate anglers that sharing fishing locations and fishing spots in real time, has a very, very profound impact on localized fishing populations and localized fish. So when I said ban the internet, I actually wasn't totally being facetious. I really think with the population increase and with populated waterways like Sydney, still one of the great fisheries. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining that the fishery's dead or anything. It's still an incredible fishery, but I have seen it pretty amazing, and it's definitely not quite as good as it used to be. And I do blame the internet a bit for just causing localized problems. How it impacts an entire state or an entire country, I'm sure it's got to have an impact in some places.
Shane, you got different issues over there, and it sounds like you got very good, I guess, social pressure amongst your anglers themselves. Like, you've got a one fish bag limit, you've got bigger fish. What would you like to see in South Australia?
I'd like to see kingfish made catch and release only.
Yep, that's
And
a big one.
We've got a bit of a group happening that's pushing exactly that way, and there's got a lot of support already.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Barring that, a fairly tight slot limit, maybe 90 to 110, something like that. But I think a slot limit like that would work. But I'm pretty confident that this push for the catch and release is going to gain steady momentum and just keep rolling until something happens. And I'd really love to see that.
Yep, look, that's probably going to be right up there in your drivers for tourism, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Come to South Australia and catch your trophy. That's, I guess, where that's angled at in terms of economic recovery. Yep. It'd be a nice problem to go, I want to keep a kingfish. Damn, this one's too big.
Yeah. As I said, there's one charter operator heading that way or operating that way now. There are several others about to follow him. Samson's and King's catch and release only, and the boat's full all the time. It was full of Victorians before COVID. Now it's been full of South Australians. And I'm sure when the Vic's allowed to come over here again, it's going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. But catch and release is not putting any of these people off. In fact, it's more an attractive thing than anything else.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of trophy hunting without the kill shot. It's
exactly
pretty cool. I know my comment was slightly facetious at the beginning. I just didn't want to finish. That as my number one thing. I on what Shane said, just better. My biggest thing here would be better fisheries management, which encompasses all of that. So I should say that would be the most important thing for me on my local.
Yeah, I get it, and I get a vibe from you, Justin. You'd like to see the minimum size increased, a bit of short-term pain. For a year or two.
I even think those who are arguing that the kingfish stocks, there are still some who believe the stocks are fine, who would still agree that, the science is pretty clear on breeding size, and they'd agree on upping the size and so on. Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's a losing situation for anglers. If I thought we were going to be giving up ground, ceding ground, I'd be a bit more apprehensive, but I actually think it's a win-win. Just as much to eat, just more fish in the water, probably more opportunity to come home with a feed more often. Because at the moment, to go out and catch a feed of kingfish, there's many people who are missing out because they're just not catching the fish. They're just not there. So we can increase the number of fish and decrease the bag limit. And just make the size bigger. And, you're getting lots of 85 and 90 centimetre fish to take home. That's a win-win.
Yeah, like you say, even if you don't go and change the bag limit, but let's just up that size, you'd probably find a lot more people, well, I don't need to keep 5. A couple of these 85, 90s will do my needs. And it's got the same net result of the same amount of meat on the table, but less fish being taken for that. I personally would love to know a lot more. Like, yes, I like all of what you guys have said, but I'd love to know more about their movements and their interrelationship. Why have we got these big fish in South Australia and the lack of, say, the metre or smaller fish that are way more prevalent on the East Coast? I don't know where the money would come from to do that kind of science, because we're heading into a shitty time science-wise. Everyone goes, show me the science, show me the science. You know what? The money might not be there for it, especially for a species that hasn't got commercial importance. But I'd sorely love it. It'd be fantastic to know a lot more. What about you, Andy?
Probably blend all of those things together that everyone's covered.
We solved it.
Yeah, pretty much. Look, we do know a lot about the species and I guess where they're spread and genetics and all that kind of stuff. But as you said, John, fill in the gaps that, there's too many assumptions being made. And when you've got a recapture rate of fish that's 12% and up of tagged fish, like that's a red flag. I think it's something that it needs movement on, and it needs to be done sooner rather than later. Like, I personally don't think there's, you can't sit back, do nothing for 10 years. I honestly reckon they'll be gone. Probably 5 years, it's looking at something drastic could happen to the fishery. So,
yeah. And I mean, that recapture rate is the highest of any species in the world. So let that sink in.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, it's sort of high. It's the highest rate of any species in the world. And better management of the species will only come with better science. And we've for too long, we've done fisheries management where it's kind of like throwing darts at a board and hoping, and there has to be better science. But I do think with kings, we have the advantage of having the science from aquaculture to know breeding size and that sort of thing. And I think that's a place to start. But, to wait 5 years for proper stock assessments to come in, I think would be a bit crazy, given that we already know we're harvesting fish that haven't bred and we're allowing too many fish to be taken.
Yeah, spot on, exactly right. So that, couple that existing science that's already there and, merge it with all the citizen science that's out there, because there is so much of it. There's been a lot of tagging done by recreational anglers. So, let's pile it all together and use it to our benefit. We're going to win from it.
Yep, no doubt.
Anything we want to cover, gents?
Yeah, I want to say what a great honour it is to be on a podcast with Shane. I've been reading a bit of Shane's stuff for years. So.
Oh, right.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
must mean I'm a lot older than you, buddy. That's what it means.
No, it's all right.
I agree, Justin. And in typical outflow style, we're leaving the intros to the end of the program.
We can cut and edit anything.
No, it's how we do things. Shane Mansforth, SA Angler, Justin Duggan, Sydney Fly Fishing. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks very much.
And on that, sorry, before we go, where can we find you guys? Social media, contact-wise, Justin, well, you're not on the internet anymore, so...
He's shut down.
No, I am, just to make sure you're not giving my spots away.
Yeah. How can people find you guys?
Just as SA Angler on Facebook.
Yep.
Got a huge Facebook following, easy to find.
And Instagram, I've seen you on there too, Shane.
Yeah, on Instagram. I don't know much about Instagram. I'll leave that to my son, but I'm a Facebooker only.
Someone's doing it for you.
Yeah, I'm. You can find my website, sydneyflyfishing.com.au, and on Instagram as @SydFly, and on Facebook, just follow me as Justin Duggan. That's probably the easiest one, because those bloody Facebook business accounts are hopeless.
Yeah, they are, aren't they, mate? They are.
They don't work, so just follow me.
Out of interest, Justin, your business there, are you purely fly, or do you do any lure fishing?
Yeah, I do a lot of lure, so I'm all artificial, so fly and lure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm called Sydney Fly Fishing. It was a point of difference because I love my fly, but no, I do a lot of lure stuff. Heaps and heaps of lure stuff. So a lot of stuff, Jewies on lure and kings, and yeah.
I saw you're out fishing with Jay Kim from Fishing Station the other day. He's a friend of ours.
Oh, is he? I'm sorry to hear that for your sake. He's a very fine angler, and I do work in the tackle store one day a week with him just to keep my finger on the pulse with the tackle industry. And we got on well. We went out to test out some lures, and I don't know how many species we got, but it was typical Sydney, like just jewfish and kingfish and flathead and just a bit of everything. It's good.
Good stuff. Good. Thank you, legends, and hopefully people get a little bit out of this, and it makes you reflect and think about kingfish a little bit.
Thank you for listening to The Outflow by Ebb Tide Tackle. Subscribe to the podcast to listen to other episodes and stay up to date with new releases. And don't forget to rate and review.